Hello. Um, in the past, we've presented quite a bit about max completions, place for frac, coil tubing, wireline intervention, snubbing, aggregation of data. In the past, we focused strictly on functionality and what NOV is doing. Today is really the most exciting announcement we've had since we started that project. And it is a formal partnership with Seismos, using their downhole technology in the frac space to bring together a more holistic approach to max completions and to that frac data um, platform to help the industry. So I'm here with Steven from Seismos today. I'm going to let him introduce himself, and then we're going to talk a little bit about max completions, where it is in its current status, and where Seismos is, and how this partnership brings together a holistic approach. So, Stephen?
Yeah, so Steven Bourgoyne, Director of Operations at Seismos. Been with Seismos since 2017, and I'm excited to be here today.
Awesome. So, max completions, we worked for the last 2 years to bring together a solution, not a product. And that solution is really centered around aggregating data in the field on one timestamp, raw data, but putting together all of the other elements on location that may be from the frac spread, it could be from flowback, it could be from wellheads, it could be from offsets. But until this point, we haven't done anything downhole. And we know that what Seismos has been doing has been focused on the actual frac job and the reservoir and individual stages. So we're going to bring in your SAFA technology into the max completions platform. And this is a mutual partnership where one is not overshadowing the others, but it's truly bringing together the best of both worlds into a bigger spot. Can you tell us, or tell who we're talking to, what is Seismos doing? How did you kind of get there? And then we'll just kind of go from there.
Sure. So a little bit about Seismos. We specialize in what we call controlled acoustics or controlled acoustic sensing. And so when we're looking at things like pressure data or acoustic data, it's at higher samples per second, let's say, than 1 second data. And so with SAFA, which stands for Seismos Acoustic Friction Analysis, what we're able to do is use rate drops that occur during pumping, whether they're planned or unplanned, and provide measures of not only pipe friction, but also perforation friction. And you can do that during treatment in real time. And we can get into some of the different things that you can do with that. But from a very high level, anytime you're doing, let's say 100 barrels per minute, and you can grab a rate drop as little as 3 barrels per minute, you can get these measures of both pipe and perforation friction.
Awesome. So talking about perf efficiency, pipe friction, perf friction, how are your customers using that information today to drive what they're doing in their business?
Sure. Let's look at the pipe friction part of it. One of the big issues as far as the industry has today is when it comes to our assumptions about pipe friction. The way it's derived is typically there's friction tables that are built with different friction reducer loadings, different friction reducer chemistry. And this is all done typically in a lab setting, a very controlled environment where you're using some known flow loop with some very controlled water quality. And then you're producing this table at different rates, right? But naturally there'll be some error when you transition that data to the field because you have a different environment. You have different pipe, you have water quality that's constantly changing, you have the same FR that you tested could be sitting in a location somewhere in the sun and might degrade over time. But nonetheless, what you're able to do is get a handle on what that FR performance is with all these other variables that could be changing that might be different from the lab testing environment, right? And then the scale is also different, flow loop versus a 20,000 foot well. And so it it allows us to take snapshots in time throughout the treatment and get, instead of looking at a table that is going to be extrapolated, we can get a measure of what that pipe friction is with the current conditions that it's facing. And that allows you to see what that FR performance is. And so in cases where you might need to increase FR concentration to get more performance, you can do that.
Yeah.
Or if you can highlight that, hey, maybe my water quality is an issue here, or maybe the variability I have in that water quality is impacting this. And so all of these can come into play with just the pipe friction side. When you're looking at perf friction, it's extremely critical, because as engineers, when we design a job, if you look at the parameters that we're using, it's barrels per foot, it's pounds per foot, it's barrels per minute per perf. They design flow rates and perfs around a certain perf friction in mind. Like, they're wanting to maintain a certain perf friction with the belief that I need some perf friction in order to maintain consistent flow throughout all the holes, right? And so what we're able to do is measure what that perf friction is at those rates to tell you what is the perf friction that you're getting. And so that allows you to QC things such as, are my holes really the size that I think they are? Am I starting off with all my holes taking fluid? Is it fewer holes?
Got it.
And then based on that, you can track the treatment as it evolves. And so things such as a plug slippage, a plug leaking would be highlighted as a sudden decrease in perforation friction. And so it's things like this that enable the user to make actions in real time. And so having that in the Max platform allows the person who's treating or whoever is making those decisions to have that at their fingertips.
That's really exciting. So, because most of the team that sits in the background and supports customers and supports Max Completions jobs are frac engineers in their previous experience. So we have all got samples, put them in fan 50s, right, ran it to get what we thought would happen. And then we went out to the field and we ran a scheduled job. So, and we'd run that scheduled job, exactly like the blender schedule says. And we might see those pressure drops from a plug slip, but we didn't deviate as we're going unless you're starting to get a lot of net pressure. The bad things are happening. So what's the value? So you talked about a lot of like how and what it's doing, but that value, are we starting to see the industry adjust on the fly and truly take into account what's happening downhole? Or, is that the value, is to move to real-time blender schedules and actually be able to adjust?
That's the vision, and I think we'll eventually get there.
Yep.
You're starting to see with operators now, they're moving to these real-time centers where people are watching these jobs remotely. Just like self-driving cars over time, maybe eventually frac gets there. I think we have some time before that. But even knowing the moment that, let's say, a plug slips, you're absolutely right. Now all the treatments you designed to go into that stage is now going to the previous stage. And so you can ask yourself, like, am I wasting this? Am I stimulating new rock? And so when you think about value, you can put it in terms of what is the cost of losing one cluster. And so if you look at the production life over a well and take the number of clusters in that well and just simple, bro math, if I will, come up with a value per cluster, it's not a small number. It can be upwards of $70K per cluster. And so saving one cluster is easy as $70K, just in the production part of it. That's not including when you get to if you're consistently treating a stage with only, let's say, 70% of your holes open or 70% of your clusters taking fluid at the same rates, that's going to treat at a higher pressure. So you're using more horsepower, you're spending more time on location. We've seen upwards of additional cost of $1,500, per stage, and might not seem like a big number at the stage perspective, but when you start extrapolating that over 500, 200 wells, it becomes big numbers.
I think that is that vision. That's why Max Completions and NOV knew that if you're just living at surface and you're just living with algorithms and wellhead, state transitions and trying to derive stuff from surface sensors, there's a huge gap. And if you're living downhole, there's also a gap there, because to do what you explained, that kind of self-driving car, you have to have that whole picture. And that's really why I think both teams are so excited about that. It's for us to be able to drive change into that market. So,
and I think this is just a start. Over time, what you'll see is you'll start to see machine learning getting involved to where it starts to become more predictive. Where, let's say you have a rate drop, it gives you a snapshot of what's happening downhole at that moment, and then following that becomes some predicted results based on certain knobs you turn, along with the economic component behind that. So if you choose option A, this is what it's going to cost you. This is what it will look like. I see it evolving to that.
Yep, awesome. So I really thank you for coming by today.
Sure.
And I really thank you for the partnership.
Pleasure.
We're going to be presenting Seismos and Max Completions at ERTEC on Monday, I believe the 17th. That evening, there's also going to be a happy hour where you can come by and talk to us informally with our leadership teams. You can ask us technical questions. You can ask people on our team that are more technical than us the real questions, but you can also talk to our leadership about those partnerships and what it means for the industry. Both groups are extremely excited, from the guy or gal dealing with those single stages, those single jobs, that single perf, all the way to where are we going for the future. So I really appreciate you coming by, and we hope to see everyone out there next Monday. Well, I think we're going to post the slide as soon as we're done, so you'll see the invitation, see all the times and dates. So thank you all for listening. So
it's been a pleasure. Looking forward to it.